This is Radolph on the Radar Entertainment Blog coming to you with the 2023 MLB trade deadline recap. So much happening. You see this hat here. Was in Atlanta, was in St. Pete's, Tampa Bay, Miami, Philly this summer, moving in and out of apartments. A lot going on. Usually I come out with a list that tells you each team if they should be buyers or sellers, and if they're sellers, who they should trade for, and buyers what position they need. So we'll start with the West. The Dodgers obviously were favorites. They went out and said, we're going to get Lance Lynn to bolster this rotation because Buehler hasn't pitched this year. May, Gosselin, and Kershaw haven't been the most healthy, and we've got a lot of young starting pitchers. So Lance Lynn's a good idea. Ryan Yarbrough, he started and relieved as a bulk guy in Tampa Bay before he went to Kansas City this year. They gave up 2 prospects to get him. I don't know, it's a little bit steep for a swing guy. They gave up 2 prospects because one for each guy, Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly. They bring Joe Kelly back. If Joe Kelly could pitch the way he did for a few weeks to a month with the White Sox, or back when he was with the Dodgers, they get a solid reliever, and they get 2 guys to start innings for them. They go and get Ahmed Rosario, who's always been known for his bat more than his glove, and Kiki Hernandez, a super utility guy who also played for them. They gave up 2 prospects. They also got Tyson Miller and Pat Valleca in some trades, and sent Brule, Corlick, and Bickford out. Now, the hope is Ahmed Rosario can play second base for this team because they've had to play Mookie Betts at second base, and Mookie Betts should be staying in the outfield. So by getting Kiki Hernandez and Ahmed Rosario, with already having Miguel Rojas, there should be no need for Mookie Betts to play the infield, and that should help them out there, keeping their best asset protected and getting 2 pitchers in the rotation, 1 in the bullpen. I don't give them an A because Lance Lynn is not a number 1, and without Buehler and without Kershaw, who's been injured this year, they don't have a 1, and Lance Lynn's not. And Joe Kelly is a good reliever, but again, he struggled with the White Sox, and Yarbrough is a swing guy. The Royals got lucky they signed on a minor league deal. The D-backs, surprisingly in first place for most of this. Them and the Dodgers are right now the top 2 teams in the division. I don't get them trading Josh Rojas, a third baseman who's played some second base. He can hit. He's not the best hitter. And they give up 2 prospects for Paul Sewald, who, as a Mets fan, that failed starting pitcher, turned it around in Seattle as a reliever. They have Mark Melancon under contract and a few other guys, and the Mantiply guy, but again, hasn't been healthy this year for both of them. But what makes no sense is they trade for Paul Sewald, but then they trade Andrew Chafin. Andrew Chafin's been good for them. Why would you trade your left-handed relief pitcher out and give up 3 players to get Paul Sewald when you can just wait for the other guys to come back? That's where it's like they crossed each other out because those don't make any sense. So whatever they got for Chafin, probably not worth it for the 3 guys they gave up for Paul Sewald. Jace Peterson, he's a super utility guy who can't play second, third, first, the outfield, you name it. He basically is going to play positions that Josh Rojas was playing. So again, makes no sense to trade away Josh Rojas and Andrew Chafin and get Sewald and Peterson. And they gave away 1 player for Tommy Pham. Again, I like Tommy Pham. He's a good offensive corner outfielder, DH. But the Diamondbacks this year have had Fletcher and Canzone, whatever his name is, with obviously rookie All-Star Corbin Carroll, and Lourdes Gurriel made the All-Star team. They have Kyle Lewis on the roster, and obviously they got Jake McCarthy and Alek Thomas. That's so many outfielders that why would you go ahead and trade for Tommy Pham another when you've been also DHing Evan Longoria because he's not playing third base because you're playing Rivera. So again, some of these moves just don't seem to make any sense. They're just like, let's get Tommy Pham, Jace Peterson, and Paul Sewald and see where that goes. The Giants. I knew they would be in the middle of the pack and they wouldn't be at the top. But they're like, let's get A.J. Pollock because Mitch Haniger's hurt, so we need another corner outfield bat. Cool. They got them also Marquez Johnson and Jack Larson in small trades, and Mark Matthews was part of that Pollock trade. Utility guy that doesn't really do anything. Padres, they're a disappointing team, so what made no sense is they went and got Garrett Cooper and gave up a pitcher in Ryan Weathers who could start or relieve for them. He's not old, he's a young guy. They at least get a prospect back with Garrett Cooper. So I don't know why the Marlins would give up their everyday first baseman DH who made the All-Star team last year and a prospect. That's another time we get to the Marlins. So they were like, okay, cool. We'll acquire Garrett Cooper and we'll acquire G-Man Choi. I don't know how you can physically play 3 first baseman DHs at the same time between Cooper, G-Man Choi, and Cronenworth, who's playing first base because they signed Bogart, and Tatis is in the outfield, and Kim is at second base. Unless you're going to play, Cronenworth at second base or shortstop as natural positions, then I don't know how you're going to make it work in order to get Garrett Cooper and G-Man Choi both in the lineup. Giving Rivas up, he's a quad A guy, not a big deal. They gave up 2 prospects for G-Man Choi, where He's an older veteran. Where's he going to play? And Rich Hill's in his 40s. He's not the type of move that puts him on the top. When you have Yu Darvish and Blake Snell and Joe Musgrove, you already have the top 3 guys in your rotation. Rich Hill just slides into the back. But I just don't understand it, because you made the move to move Cronenworth to first base, and then you're complaining you don't have any production at first base, so you get 2 first basemen. I don't know. Getting Scott Barlow is a good move because that gives him a real setup man, because Josh Hader didn't really have anybody in that bullpen that stands out to help him get a setup man, and they just give up 1 player. That makes sense. It just doesn't make sense for the 2 first basemen and giving up prospects and all this other stuff. The Rockies, they did exactly what a last place team that's going nowhere does. You trade away Pierce Johnson, who became the closer this year because Bard is having some mental health issues, and you picked up Brad Hand on like a minor deal, or picked him up earlier in the season, whatever it was, and you flipped in. You literally flipped the 2 of them for prospects. Like, even if they're not good or whatever players, that's a good thing. Then you flipped, obviously, it says here for Pierce Johnson, they got 2 prospects. They got 2 prospects for him. That's a good move. To get 2 prospects for a guy who came out of nowhere to be your closer, and 1 prospect for right hand. Even if the 3 of them don't turn out, you get 3 young guys for 2 relievers that you don't really, really need. And when it comes to trading C.J. Cron and Grichuk in that one trade, you got 2 prospects, 1 for each. And in that Moustakas trade, you probably got like nothing in return. But for the most part, they did what they're supposed to. Moustakas on a minor league deal. He came in the lineup, played first base, DH, and third base. You flipped him. Grichuk has been on the team for like a year or so. You flipped him because you didn't need him, because you're not going anywhere. And again, you're not going anywhere, and you have Nolan Jones, Tokayla, this Montero guy. You have too many first baseman DHs, so there's no need for Moose and Cron at the same time. So the Rockies get an A, because it doesn't matter if any of the players they got back from Moose, Grichuk, Cron, Hand, and Johnson turn out. They do what they're supposed to. You trade veterans you don't need when you're a bad team. They did the best out of any team in this division. I'll say the Dodgers probably the second best going to the East. The Braves are pretty stacked. They have one of the best teams. You got Acuna, Albies, Olsen, Riley, Murphy / Darno, and then obviously Rosario and Ozuna and Michael Harris and Waldo Arcia in the All-Star team. Yeah, then they're waiting on Max Fried to come back and Kyle Wright from injury, but you have the 2 of them, so obviously Spencer Strider and Charlie Morton. They're good. Their bullpen has Raciel Iglesias closing game. So them getting Pierce Johnson, Brad Hand is just setup man. That's what you do. You bolster your bullpen. And getting Nicky Lopez bolsters their bench. I don't know what they're doing with Charlie Culberson. The dude barely plays, but getting Nicky Lopez, he's fast. He's a great defensive player. He can come in. Again, bolstering them. Phillies, they have already Nola and Suarez and Wheeler and Tajon Walker at the top. So them getting Michael Lorenzen, who the Tigers turned out he got his most healthy season since his rookie season and was an all-star, they get him to be the 5th starter. That's pretty good, and there's only 1 prospect. They get utility man Rodolfo Castro to place Josh Harrison. That's just changing the depth there. But they now have a 1 through 5 that's pretty good for their stretch run. The Marlins, they gave a 2 prospect Dave Robertson because they don't have a closer. That's a good move to get. They got Josh Bell, but again, I don't understand giving away a prospect and Garrett Cooper just to get a 1 guy back in Dave Weather, just so you can get Josh Bell. I thought they really liked Garrett Cooper. I know he's becoming a free agent, but like, you have to give up anything to get Josh Bell. And obviously, they gave up a prospect, and they gave up, Gene Segura. But Gene Segura this year is the league statistical 1 of the worst hitters. I said he has no business playing third base or batting 6th or 7th because he's a middle infielder who doesn't have any power. And he's obviously not hitting for average or getting on base enough. So if Josh Bell is going to solve the problem in their lineup where they need power, that's good. But the way to solve the problem where you don't have power in the middle of your lineup is to not put Soler second, not put Jazz Chisholm 4th, and go Soler, Avi Garcia, and now Josh Bell in those power spots in the lineup. And that just makes sense. It really does. And also to help their power spot, they went and got Jake Berger. I'm going to give them an A in that to get to the White Sox later. You literally give him up for 1 pitching prospect who had Tommy John a few years ago, and you get Jorge Lopez from the Twins, who was an all-star closer with the Orioles just last year. So Robertson and Lopez, both have been closers and all-stars. At the back of your bullpen for the stretch run, good idea. Get Josh Bell and Jake Berger to be your corner infielder DH and slugged in the middle lineup with Soler and Avi Garcia. That's what you do. You get power guys that you need because you weren't getting anything at third base. Supposedly, they're just not getting enough, so it's just like, okay, cool. Mets. They did what they're supposed to. They're having a bad, disappointing season, and they did something unlike the Padres. They said, you know what, Dave Robertson, we don't have a closer because Diaz out for the year. You can go to Miami. And as I said, we get like 2 prospects back. Mad Max Scherzer, you can go to Texas, and we'll get at least 1 prospect for you, and we have all the money so we can still pay for it. Justin Verlander, you can go to the Astros, and you can give us 2 prospects, and we don't got to pay, and we'll pay for some of it, but we don't got to worry about long-term paying for you guys. Mark Canha, who they paid for the past few years, they get 1 prospect back. Tommy Pham, who they signed just this year, goes to the D-backs, and they gave up, obviously, 1 player to get him. And then they also traded reliever Dominic Leone to the Angels, and they get something back as well. Then the fact that they clear out most of their team, getting Phil Bickford from the Dodgers, Trevor Gott recently, and Adam Kolarek from the Dodgers, getting some pitchers in their bullpen, that's cool. But they did what they're supposed to. They traded the 2 most valuable pitchers they had in Verlander and Scherzer. They traded away their closer and a setup man, and then they traded away 2 of their corner bats. That's what you're supposed to do when you're out of the race and you guys are impending free agents or they have 1 year left and you don't want to pay them anymore. That's a good move by the Mets. They did what they're supposed to. They now still have Quintana, Cody Senga, and Carrasco, but again, that's not scaring anybody, and again, they don't have a bullpen. And right now, with Starling Marte out, it's just Brandon Nimmo in the outfield. He's all by himself. And the Nationals made 1 trade. They traded Candelario to the Cubs, and they got like 2 prospects. This whole trade deadline, I'm going to keep telling you, is all about reunions, because you saw what it was. Grichuk and Cron went back to Los Angeles. That's a reunion, right there and then. Okay? And the Dodgers getting Kike Hernandez and Joe Kelly, that's again, reuniting with them. Because it is. Verlander going to Houston, that's reuniting with the team he was on before. And that was the team he was on, obviously, most recently. And I thought the Nationals would have traded Corey Dickerson, but they just released him. That's stupid. Victor Robles is out for the year. Couldn't trade him. I thought Dominic Smith, who's been a healthy and okay year, they would have traded him. Maybe they would have traded Patrick Corbin. But they only made 1 move and got 2 prospects, so that's like a C+, B-. It's okay. I don't know how good these prospects are for the Cubs, but I literally am thinking that you probably could have traded more guys. But I feel like the Mets did what they're supposed to, like the Rockies did. The Marlins and Phillies made really good moves, and the Braves just solidified their team. Brewers, they're surprisingly in first place. Cardinals are bad. So they got Andrew Chafin, and that's a good move because Devin Williams needs help in the bullpen. You know, Darren Ruff was hurt. That didn't work out. Luke Voigt, that didn't work out. Brian Anderson's currently hurt. Rowdy Tellez currently hurt. So getting Carlos Santana for 1 prospect gives you a power bat who can play first base or DH. Getting Mark Canha for 1 prospect that gives you offense is good. But what I don't get the move is that he's strictly a left fielder. And my idea of Yelich in right field and Winker in left field to start the season, they haven't done that. So I don't know, is Mark Canha going to switch back and forth between first base, DH, and left field? And Carlos Santana's going to one day play first base, one day DH or Yelich? What happens to Rowdy Tellez? He was a key part of this lineup offensively. They traded Luis Urias and Alex Jackson. You know why? Because Alex Jackson is not going to play. They're pretty stacked at catcher. And Luis Urias seems to lose his job to all the other young guys. So, you know what? Whatever they get for them, cool. The Reds got this Sam Mole from the A's. A's are a bad team, so I don't know how good this guy's really going to be. And you get 1 player back. Okay. The Reds have been good offensively with all the young position players. But their pitching staff is very young, and it would have been nice if maybe they got Rich Hill or Max Scherzer or somebody as a veteran who could lead the front of that rotation. That's all I'm saying. Like, that would have made sense. So they get it D because it doesn't really help. The Cubs, they think they're somewhat in the race, so they get Candelario because they never tried to win Rio, so we know Wisdom and Madrigal are not third basemen. So they needed some offense. After being one of the league's statistical worst hitters last year, he's having a rebound year, and the Nationals did what they're supposed to. They get Cuellar, an extra pitcher, by trading Vasquez, who they don't play, and they got P.J. Higgins back. Whoop-de-doo. Now then, the Pirates, they did what they're supposed to. They fell back down to earth, and they stink. So you trade Carlos Santana, and you trade G-Man Choi, and now Connor Joe's your first baseman, so he's no longer playing the outfield. So you trade away 2 veterans to teams that needed them. I don't know if the Padres really needed them, but yeah. And Rich Hill, obviously, has said he was in that G-Man Choi trade. They even traded Austin Hedges, everyday catcher, to Texas. And they get themselves at least pool player money for him. And they acquired Bailey Fowler by trading Rodolfo Castro, utility man. So they're like, well, we can take a chance on a young starting pitcher to see if we can fix him that would replace Chill in the rotation, and we get money for Austin Hedges, and we get one prospect for Santana and prospects for Hill and G-Man Choi. They did what they're supposed to. They probably could have traded, David Bednar or some other guys, but obviously they like their core of Cruz, Hayes, and Sawinski, and now they have these catchers up there and Reynolds and stuff. So maybe they should play those catchers instead of playing them in the outfield. And the Cardinals, disappointing season, they did what they're supposed to. They traded Paul DeJong, who rebounded after a poor few seasons, to the Blue Jays. Okay, and they get themselves one prospect back. And they're fine because between Tommy Edman, Gorman, and Donovan, they're set in the infield at 3 guys there. They don't need him. Jordan Hicks, for a few years, I was like, is he going to be a starting pitcher for the Cardinals? Is he going to close? Just wasting him as a middle relief guy doesn't help. So they traded him to the Blue Jays as well, and they got 2 prospects back. So they got 3 guys for 2 guys there. And then Chris Stratton was last year traded, was it last year or 2 years ago? He was traded at least last year, 2 years ago with Jose Quintana to the Cardinals and got himself, and now he's gone to the Texas Rangers with Jordan Montgomery, and in that situation, they got 3 prospects for the 2 of them. So, again, Montgomery's the pending free agent. They're not going anywhere. They might as well get money for him. And Chris Stratton is a swing guy. And then Jack Flaherty going to the Orioles. They got 3 prospects. You got 3 prospects from the Orioles, okay? 3 prospects from the Blue Jays. And 3 prospects from the Rangers right there, man. That is 6 prospects for guys like Flaherty and DeJong, who either haven't been healthy or disappointing for a few seasons before this year, getting enough games, being somewhat productive, somewhat healthy. Hicks actually closing games out this year and actually being valuable. Stratton pitching key innings in the bullpen. And Montgomery has been the Cardinals' best pitcher the last couple of years because of Mikolas and Stratton being, Flaherty being down. So they did what they're supposed to. When you're down and out and you're not having a good year and you decide we're going to hold on to these players who are impending free agents because those are the ones we want to resign and we don't care about these, good idea. Now we go to the American League. The Rangers lost Jacob deGrom. They're like, okay, so we still got Andrew Heaney, Nathan Eovaldi, Martin Perez, Dane Dunning, and Jonathan Gray. Because obviously, Odorizzi hasn't pitched for them a single minute, so they're missing 2 of their main guys. But they're like, we'll get Mad Max to replace Jacob deGrom at the top with Nathan Eovaldi and Andrew Heaney. We get Montgomery. He'll be in the rotation because as Dane Dunning's still young, but he, Martin Perez and Jonathan Gray, I'm not dying for any one of those guys. I feel like if you're going to go in the playoffs with Eovaldi, Scherzer, Andrew Heaney, and Montgomery, you could put Martin Perez in the bullpen, which is what they did. Dane Dunning in the bullpen, and Jonathan Gray. They're just bumped out. Chris Stratton, again, a swing guy. He'll eat a lot of innings in that bullpen. Austin Hedges, obviously with the injury to Jonah Heim and Mitch Garver, has always been a hurt guy. It's good to have a good defensive catcher on this team. They originally, we talked about a few weeks ago on any of the podcasts, they got Aroldis Chapman. They gave up 2 prospects for him, but he helps out this bullpen, okay? Now, Spencer Howard, they didn't need him. They can move him out. Okay, Astros. Getting Kendall Graveman helps out their bullpen because last year they went bullpen heavy, but they basically give up only this Corey Lee guy who I guess they don't want to use him. So they're like, we don't need him. And Verlander was 2 prospects. Whoop-de-doo. So Verlander helps out the fact that McCullers hasn't pitched all year and he's hurt. And I think either Luis Garcia or Christian Javier, one of those guys, had Tommy John surgery. So it's really been Framber Valdez and one of those guys in this rotation, man. And Hunter Brown and JP France, they have to piece together some young guys. So getting Verlander to help Framber Valdez is a good idea any day. Mariner said, you know what? We got Trammell and we got Kalenic. And they have this other guy up now as well. That, you know what? We don't need Pollock. So Pollock can go to San Francisco. You're next year. Paul Sewell, we're not in the race, so we're going to trade our closer. Cool. They get this Ed Bizzardo dude, for one player. I don't really, doesn't do much for them. Josh Rojas comes in that Sewell trade, with the 2 prospects, and so Rojas, he could probably play some third base and they could DH Suarez if they want. They could play Rojas second base because obviously Colton Wong was a disappointment. They got this Trent Thornton guy, whatever, for Mason McCoy. But again, you get Rojas and 2 prospects for Paul Sewald. That's a win in my day. It doesn't matter that you got really nothing for AJ Pollock. Doesn't matter. He's an extra guy. Okay, and then the Angels, who think they're in the race despite the fact that Urshela, Rendon, and Mike Trout are hurt, and Fletcher did not work out, and Jared Walsh has become a huge disappointment. And, you're looking at, like, Rengifo struggling in the first half and Drury being an okay player that you have to go out and get. And Joe Adell's hurt again. You have to go out and get before the deadline. You have to go out and get Escobar from the Mets and Mike Moustakas from the Rockies. And then you're like, that's not enough. We need to get C.J. Cron and Randall Grichuk. So now we have 2 guys who can play first base or DH. And Moose and Escobar can both play third or second. They've done that. And Grichuk can be a good corner outfielder because right now, I forgot to mention, Taylor Ward's out. So they're literally going with Mickey Moniak, Hunter Renfroe, and now Randall Grichuk. That's not a bad outfield. I would think guys like Grichuk and Cron, Moose, and Escobar would be scattered on other teams who are having a bad season and there's injuries and they need to play somebody, or it's a veteran team that needs to fill a gap with one guy. The fact that they're filling the whole lineup with these guys and Ohtani, that's the type of season they're having, that they've filled this up. One thing I have to make a thing is that the Rockies should have traded Luis Diaz. He had an all-star season, a breakout year. He was a backup before. And literally, I could say this, is that the Giants, they're not making the playoffs, but they could use a catcher. The Marlins could use an offensive catcher because Stallings is hurt. I mean, is a glove first guy. Like, I was thinking maybe. The Brewers, probably not. But I'm thinking, like, you know what? Maybe the Rangers could have got him instead of Austin Hedges. The Astros, Maldonado is a good defensive player. You could have got Diaz as a backup. Angel, I thought maybe they could have traded for him if they were going to trade for somebody. But there already enough trades with the Rockies. And then lastly, the Angels traded Tucker Davidson out. But then they're like, we need to address the pitching side. So they gave him a prospect for this Dominic Leone guy who the Mets just had recently and just flipped him because, we don't need him. The Angels want him. So they're like, take another prospect. Take a prospect for Leone, take prospects for Moose, Escobar, 2 for Groen and Krichik, and then let's give you 2 of our top prospects, Lucas Giolito and Ronald Lopez. As a White Sox fan, I was hoping we'd keep Lucas Giolito and re-sign him because he's been more consistent than Dylan Cease, who had a Cy Young season last year, but this year, not so much. And Lopez, who was not ready for prime time when they gave him the first opportunity to close games out this year, and we all know he's a failed starting pitcher. Both are pending free agents, and no offense to, Tyler Anderson and Ohtani and Patrick Sandoval, Lucas Giolito is not going to put him over the top. Verlander, Max Scherzer would have put him over the top. Even Jordan Montgomery or Jack Flaherty would have helped them out. Michael Lorenzen would have been a much bigger help for them as well. I don't know. Lance Lynn is a no, but there's just Rich Hill would have helped them out more. I'm just like, you can't rely on Lucas Giolito to be your ace or your number 2 at this point. And then the A's, who are out of it, gave up Sam Moll. No one's ever heard of him, and traded Jace Peterson for a prospect. Cool. They gave up utility guys. Obviously, it didn't work out for the A's to trade Jesus Aguilar or Manny Pena. Both those were disaster signings or acquisitions for them. They didn't trade Elizabeth Diaz or Reimer Lariano or Seth Brown. I thought they could have traded them and just completely go in the rebuild. Kepler and Blackburn, due to injuries or inefficiencies, they couldn't trade them. I thought they would have traded Trevor May. So they just made 2 little minor trades for a team that should be trying to rebuild. Then we got the East, where the Yankees are somehow in last place, and all they decided to do is give the White Sox a prospect in Middleton and get the Spencer Howard guy. Whoop-de-doo. It's like, okay, you were struggling in the outfield when you're playing IKF, a catcher in the outfield, you're playing Peraza or Cabrera in the outfield, you play Bowers in the outfield, because no one in outfield is a first baseman, you tried the Willie Calhoun thing, Billy McKinney thing, Greg Allen thing, you're trying all of these different guys in the outfield, and Judge has been hurt, and Bader's been hurt. You could have traded for Tommy Pham or Randall Grichuk or one of the many outfielders that have been traded, like AJ Pollock. I'm just like, I don't understand. Or Mark Cannon. Those are guys that you could have picked up. I'm just thinking outside. I'm thinking out loud. There are definitely guys that you could have picked up just to help out your outfield, but I guess not. You could have traded Gleyber Torres and got yourself an impact closer or starting pitcher. Traded DJ LeMahieu because it's not working out for DJ LeMahieu at third base. Torres has been a little disappointment. Like, Herman's on now alcohol abuse substance and all this other stuff. Like, you could have used that. You don't have a lockdown closer. Like, you didn't improve your team, and you also could have unloaded guys because you're not going to win and you're not going to want to re-sign some of these guys. So that's like a big F for them. The Red Sox, disappointing season, and all they got at the deadline were Mauricio Llovera and Luis Urias, but they give a prospect. Luis Urias is like Alberto Mondesi, Mondesi Jr. Very talented shortstop who have been so unhealthy the past couple of years they can't even prove how good they are, so I don't understand this. And then you trade away Kike Hernandez, who's been good for you, to go back to the Dodgers, and at least you get one prospect, because they think, oh, Yu Chang, Pablo Reyes, and Christian Arroyo, I'm so happy with those guys. I'm not happy with those guys. I'd rather Kike Hernandez any day than those guys. Blue Jays, as we mentioned, the Cardinals, they gave up 3 prospects in separate trades, but combined to get Paul DeYoung because Bo Bichette got hurt, and that's fine. DeYoung will fill in there, and that's totally cool. He'll be a free agent. Jordan Hicks, because Romano got hurt, he'll fill in. That's good for them. And they got Genesis Cabrera also from the Cardinals. So you're looking at this like, wait a minute. The Cardinals got themselves 4 prospects from the Blue Jays in the last 3 weeks. It is what it is. Genesis Cabrera and Jordan Hicks and Paul DeYoung are reunited. That's cool. Rays. We all know that they've lost a lot of guys to injury. Glasnow's back. McCullen's been hurt. They've had Rasmussen and Springs hurt. And they're trying a lot of different things. And they have Zach Eflin, who they pay a lot of money for. So they made a great move by getting Aaron Savali. They gave a 1 prospect whoop-de-doo. And with the injury to, Mejia, whatever, getting Alex Jackson as a minor league, as a backup is a good idea. And getting Andrew Sampson and Manuel Rodriguez, they know how to turn around pitchers in their bullpen. They just got rid of Luis Patino to the White Sox. So they did a smart move of getting Savali. I thought that they may have gotten themselves another bat, like at first base or DH, or getting Diaz the catcher. I thought that was something they would have done, but Savali helps out because if you have a healthy McClellan with Tyler Glasnow, Zach Eflin, and Savali, you don't need to do the bulk thing. You got 4 guys. And then we get to the Orioles, who are surprisingly in first place, and they're trying to get Matt Scherzer, Justin Verlander, Dylan Cease. They didn't get those guys. They got Flaherty. They're like, we'll give you 3 prospects. Dean Kremer needs help. That's a good move. I don't know the Pissarro dude they got in. I don't even know anymore. And they got Fujinami earlier before the deadline to help their bullpen. So they get a B because they get a former top line starting pitcher and a reliever. Whoop-de-doo. It's really in that division, the Rays getting Savali and the Blue Jays getting those Cardinals players are the winners. The Yankees and the Red Sox and the are like, I don't really know anymore. Now lastly, the American Central. The Royals trading Nicky Lopez this year instead of last year when he had a better season. Trading away this quietest reliever guy and Yarborough and getting as much as you can possible for them by getting this Taylor Hearn and Nelson Vasquez and Tucker Davidson. And for Yarborough, they get 2 prospects. They get this Davidson, Vasquez, and Hearn in. Nelson Vasquez is just another outfielder. Hearn and Davidson are just other relievers for them. But the fact that they turned a guy who signed on a minor league contract, who was a swing guy from Tampa Bay recently, before he came here, for 2 prospects, and they traded Scott Barlow and got 1. I knew they were going to trade something. Obviously, they traded, Aroldis Chapman. Excuse that laugh. I don't know who the heck is outside. But they literally traded Aroldis Chapman, got 2 prospects, Yarborough 2 prospects, and Barlow 1. So they get 5 prospects for 3 of their pitchers that they don't need because they're not going anywhere. They're not part of the future. It didn't work for them to trade Amir Garrett or Hunter Dozier. But, they made the most that they could. And the Tigers, they made 1 move. You think for a team that bad, they would make trades. But most of their team are backups. Only Austin Hedges, Akil Baddoo, and Riley Green are starters. And no one wants Akil Baddoo or Austin Meadows right now. They're not trading Riley Green. Jonathan Scope didn't work out this year for them to trade. Baez is making too much money. I'm surprised they didn't try to trade Eric Haas or one of their relievers like they've done before with Soto and Joe Jimenez. And obviously Boyd got hurt, so they couldn't trade him. And Robert Rodriguez vetoed his trade. So all you could say is, you know what? We've got 1 prospect for Lorenzen having an all-star season. That's like a solid C+, B-. You did what you're supposed to. Minnesota, who could win this division, when it got Dylan Floro. Woo! They traded away Jorge Lopez, who was an all-star last year. They didn't do anything. Now, Sonny Gray, Kenta Maeda, and Pablo Lopez is a good 1-2-3. And when Chris Paddock comes back, that's fine. And they obviously like Duran as the closer. That's why they got rid of Jorge Lopez. But again, I don't think they have a great bullpen. And the lineup this year has been okay. Like Kepler and Buxton and Correa, those are their guys. They've had a hole at third base. Polanco was hurt, so they missed a lot of time second base. First base is still somewhat of a hole. This is the one time that the Twins could have actually used a position player, not a pitcher. It's surprising they didn't do anything. And then Cleveland, I don't get them trading Savali if their ace Bieber's on the injured list, McKenzie and Quantrill are also on the injured list, and they cut Plesac earlier, that they're literally going with a bunch of nobodies that they just keep churning up from their system. You would think they want to hold on to Savali. Yes, they got one prospect. What is it going to do for them now when they have a chance to win this division? Them and the Twins are going to probably lose in the first round, obviously. They got Noah Syndergaard, who has been good for Rosario, who they had such high praise for, even though it's about every season I said, move Rosario to second base, because if he plays okay enough defense but hits 15-plus home runs, that's great. And ban him in the middle of the lineup. They got literally just Noah Syndergaard. So Noah Syndergaard is going to be your ace until the other three guys come back. I don't see that, and I'm a huge Syndergaard. I got his shirt. Okay, they got this Chris Vallimont in. I don't know who that is. They got Gene Segura and a prospect for Josh Bell. And I understand trading Josh Bell because there's David Fry and Bo Naylor, both catchers. They both have good offensive games, but you can't play them both days, and they don't know how good they're going to be defensively. And Naylor can DH, so you need the first base spot open. Cool. That's fine by me. And you get a prospect. But Gene Segura is so bad statistically, and I don't know if Cleveland's going to ever play, if Cleveland's going to ever move Jimenez to shortstop so Gene Segura can play second base, or if he's just going to be on the bench just sitting there. I don't know. So, the two of them, like, the Twins get like an F. They didn't do anything to help them out, and Cleveland gets a C because they traded away their only healthy brand name pitcher, got Thor for their starting shortstop, and they don't have one because they're playing this Arias dude. And Bell is a good slugger in the middle lineup. Like, I don't get it. Lastly, let's get to the White Sox. Disappointing season from the front office to the manager to the development of these players and the coaching staff. I can't blame Darryl Boston, and I can't blame Kurt Hassler. There's not much you can do as the first base coach who helps in the outfield and the bullpen coach. There's really not much you can blame them for. It's the other things. So they made sense. They're like, Lucas Giolito and Lopez and Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly and Kendall Graveman, they're all going to be gone next year no matter what. And Middleton, who's surprisingly, again, a minor league deal. You flip him for one prospect, that was cool. You flip Graveman for this Corey Lee guy, actually start this guy. You get this young pitcher, Luis Patino, maybe he can start in this rotation to play Lynn or Giolito, cool. Trace Thompson can't hit, nice guy to have around. Mike Mayer's pitcher, he could be a crucial pitcher, I don't know, in the bullpen. And again, Lopez, as I mentioned, they're all guys. The thing that pisses me off that making this from an A trade deadline to a B minus, I'm giving them all the way down to a B minus because Giolito and Lance Lynn both are going to be free agent starting pitchers, and they're inconsistent, and you need to get something out of them. And Lopez is inconsistent, and Joe Kelly and Graveman, their whole entire existence with the White Sox as reliever, has been inconsistent. So you want to get something. And Middleton was a nice surprise. I was like, this guy had a 5-year ERA before he got here to the majors, back to the majors. Let's just see what happens. You trade Jake Berger for a dude who had Tommy John surgery in recent season when the most three exciting players in the White Sox before the season started were Luis Robert, Tim Anderson, and Jake Berger. And you're talking to a huge Joel Moncada fan, but I would much rather have Jake Berger had bad defensive plays at third base than have to deal with Moncada not being healthy, him being inconsistent, and just being a waste of the roster. And we know they can't trade him. Tim Anderson's having a bad season. He can't be traded. Vaughn having a disappointing season. Eloy was hurt. Okay, so none of these guys can be traded. I just wish they would have dumped Grandal on a team that needed a catcher because I'm going to be honest with you. I think that the Rays could have used Grandal. I feel like the Red Sox and Yankees could have used Grandal because Trevino's out for the year for the Yankees, or Donaldson. They couldn't. Those are two spots in the lineup. Like, they could have used a catcher. The Rangers looking for a backup catcher. They could have got Grandal. Astros too. Angels don't have a good catcher because Tice is an infielder. We've been over this. And Chad Walk is like a quad A catcher. They could have used a catcher. And again, I'm just like, there's just so many teams that can use a catcher. Like the Marlins, Stallings can't hit. And the Giants. Like, you could have traded Grandal, and Elvis Andrus could have been traded. If Gene Segura can be traded, then Elvis Andrus, who's a way better defensive player as a shortstop and a second base his whole career, and had better offensive seasons, like, you could have traded this guy. So the Sox go from, okay, cool, we'll trade all the old guys or the veterans or impending free agents in the bullpen and the rotation, but not Grandal or Elvis. But let's trade Jake Burger. Like, that's stupid. Who's going to hit the home runs on the White Sox? Just Robert? Is Eloy ever going to be healthy? This year, Tim Anderson and Benintendi have stunk in the power department, and Gavin Sheets and Vaughn have been both okay. Offensively, Makata's been a wash, and Grandal's been a wash offensively, that you're just like, okay, now it's all on Robert and Eloy now to hit home runs going forward because we don't have any power hitters. Like, great. Okay. Recap. Cleveland and Minnesota Minnesota gets an F. Cleveland gets a C because I don't understand the Savali and the Bell and the Rosario trade to get nothing back. White Sox went from being an A to a B minus because they traded Jake Burger for no dumb reason. The Tigers, they get a B because all they could do was trade Lorenzen, and the Royals literally traded multiple players that most teams, guys they sign on minor league deals or just average guys on their team, and got prospects back. The Orioles, they got a frontline pitcher to help them out and a reliever. The Rays got a Savali to help out the rotation and some extra pitchers. The Blue Jays got 3 Cardinals players going to help them out. The Yankees and Red Sox are failures at this deadline. The Rangers did the most. They're like, we did the most in the offseason. We're going to get Mad Max, Montgomery, Chris Stratton, Austin Hedges, Aroldis Chapman. We're going to solidify this team pitching-wise because their offense is pretty stacked. I thought they may have gotten a left fielder or a center fielder because they don't really have an everyday center fielder or left fielder you can trust. And the Astros solidified their bullpen with Kendall Graveman and solidified their rotation with Verlander because they really needed help. Mariners, they goodbye to Pollock and, like, guys that don't matter, and brought in prospects like young players like Josh Rojas and guys from the D-backs, literally for Paul Sewald, who's not worth anything. Angels, I got to give them credit. They get a C plus B minus because they went and got Gio and Lopez, Crone, Grichuk, Escobar, Moose, and Leon, but they're not making the playoffs. It's a waste of their system. A's did absolutely nothing except for trading backup infielder and a pitcher when literally they could have done more. So they get like a D, maybe a C plus, D minus, a D plus, C minus. Brewers getting Chafin, help their bullpen, Santana and Mark Canha for their lineup, and getting away the extra guys, they give them a B. I don't know where Canha's going to play. Reds getting Mole when they could have done more. That's like a D. Like, they could have done way more. The Cubs getting Candelario, Cuellar, and P.J. Higgins, and trading away Nelson Vasquez. Candelario fills the hole at third base, so that's a solid B. But they should have been sellers or done better. Pirates trading away Carlos Santana, G-Man Choi, Rich Hill, Austin Hedges, and Rodolfo Castro, and getting young pitcher Bailey Falter and some prospects back in these moves because they're a bad team makes sense. Cardinals realized they're a bad team. They weren't going to keep the young Hicks, Stratton, Flannery, Montgomery free agency and Genesis Cabrera, and they literally get 4 prospects from the Blue Jays for DeYoung, Hicks, and the Orioles give them 3 for Flattery, Stratton, and Montgomery. The Rangers gave them 3 prospects. That's like, come on. Then you get to the Braves, where they're just solidifying their team by getting a much better backup infielder in Nicky Lopez than Culberson, no offense, and getting Pierce Johnson and Brad Hand to solidify this bullpen. Phillies getting Michael Lorenzen to solidify this rotation, so it's good 1 through 5. That gives them a B+. Rodolfo Castro doesn't really do anything for me. Marlins getting Dave Robertson to solidify the bullpen. Jake Burger and Josh Bell in the middle lineup, and Jorge Lopez also in the bullpen. That gives them a B+. I'm not that excited for Jorge Lopez. I don't get the Josh Bell thing when they have Garrett Cooper and all these other guys. But getting Jake Burger obviously gives them a B+. And the Mets knew that they stunk, so trading away Robertson and Leon and Canha, Fan, Verlander, Mad Max, and getting as much as you possibly can, they get an A for selling that they're supposed to. The Nationals get a C+. Woo! They traded one guy. Dodgers getting Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly, and Ahmed Rosario, Ryan Yarbrough, and Kiki Hernandez, Tyson Miller, and Pat Vallejo. You literally get 2 guys to start, 1 reliever, and 2 infielders. Sabuki Best to be in the infield. That's a B. But Lance Lynn and Yarbrough are not putting over the top, and Rosario and Kiki Hernandez are putting over the top. And the D-backs, giving up 3 prospects for Paul Sewald. I give you started a C. Getting Jace Peterson still keeps you at a C. And getting Tommy Pham still keeps you at a C. And trading Andrew Chafin as well. Trading 3 prospects with Andrew Chafin to get Jace Peterson and Paul Sewald and Tommy Pham to C. Your outfield is stacked. Your bullpen, you could have kept Chafin, okay? And you didn't need Jace Peterson. And Giants getting Matthias, Pollock, Marcus Johnson, Larson, They probably could have done more. They also could have traded one of the many starting pitchers they had that are doing bulk things, but they didn't. So that's like a C. They did, yeah, they could participate. Padres getting Rich Hill, G-Man Choi, Cooper, and Scott Barlow. I'll give you a B. But you don't need Cooper and G-Man Choi when you already have Jake Cronenworth. And Rich Hill doesn't put you over the top. Ryan Weathers could have actually helped you out. So maybe you get a prospect whoop-de-doo. And Barlow obviously helps that Josh Hader. So those are B moves. And the Rockies get an A because they literally traded Pierce Johnson and Brad Hannessy to Cronenworth and Mike Moustakas. Got stuff for them. The reason why it's not an A, I mean, they get a B+. They don't get an A, the Rockies, because they didn't trade Luis Diaz. It's the B+. Thanks for listening to the MLB trade deadline of 2023 recap. For On the Radar Table Blog, I'm Raider. See you guys next time.